who just pulled 50 million bucks worth of pillow commercials. You call that harmless?
Oh, look at Daisy Duck Dynasty doing math.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Harriet, and these are all the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in The Boys Season 4, Episode 7, the penultimate episode of the season. And guys, we are in the home stretch here, and this episode was just the calm before the storm. And I just want to thank all you guys for buying our kick-ass new Laser Baby parody shirts at our merch store. It's a parody of that scene with the baby from Nirvana, along with the Butcher as Punisher from Amazing Spider-Man 129, and Soldier Boy calling Hitler a disappointment. Guys, when you shop our merch store, you not only support our channel, but you also support the consumerism that drives the American dream. Be an American. Buy our shit. We open with a Sesame Street parody puppet show, the Avenue V Christmas Special, and we even see the same street sign logo used on Sesame Street. Now, this, of course, is a play on the musical Avenue Q, but also remember, we have seen Avenue V before during Sam's hallucination sequences in the show Gen V. Now, the opening theme also sounds like another PBS classic, the opening to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Now, we have to note, this show is very super political, and we want to break down all of these political references that the creators of the show are making, as well as the message that they are conveying. We understand that talking politics can be uncomfortable for some, but there's just no way to avoid it when it comes to this show. And hey, that's what's great about it. If it makes you uncomfortable, that's kind of the point. The Boys has become a brilliant social commentary piece on our modern politics and the extreme divides in our country. So the imagery of A-Train being a puppet is brilliant, because that's exactly what he and other Vought Supes have been this entire series. They get their talking points and they're sent out into the world to promote those talking points. A-Train has become a puppet of Vought. But as we'll see in a moment during the title card shot, A-Train's puppet lying lifelessly symbolizes that he, A-Train, will no longer be Homelander's puppet and that he's going to join the Resistance.
I'm not joining Rebel Alliance.
So, Puppet A-Train is giving a child-targeted PSA on the dangers of a group called Antifa. Antifa stands for anti-fascist, and it's a group on the left who's described their mission as to stop those that they view as fascists rising to power, even if it means having to combat violence with violence. Now, it's important to keep in mind that Antifa is more of an idea to those on the far left than it is an actual organization. And we've heard this debate over Antifa and whether or not it's an actual threat when compared to more organized militia groups like white supremacist groups on the far right. And Antifa really has become more of a scare word used by people on the far right to paint a picture that those with a far left ideology are violent and dangerous. And that's exactly what we're seeing happen in The Boys. Starlighters are meant to represent the political left, and home teamers are meant to represent the political far right. For instance, Donald Trump cited Antifa as a reason to fear left-wing ideology in his race against Joe Biden in 2020. Just like we're seeing home teamers use the same scare word of Antifa to discredit Starlighters and paint them as violent. And just like we saw earlier this season when Starlighters were framed for the deaths of these three Homelanders.
Violent attacks by Starlight supporters left 3 innocent patriots dead.
A-Train explains that Antifa is,
it's a word for people who hate superheroes and America even more than they hate Christmas.
Now this plays into the right-wing talking points that those on the far left hate America and Christmas, giving echoes of their so-called war on Christmas derived from some people choosing to say Happy Holidays. You'll remember this was also the central point of the Vought on Ice Christmas show.
Happy Holidays!
Excuse me? Don't you mean Merry Christmas?
A-Train then begins singing the If You See Something, Say Something song, playing into last week's theme of Vought and Homelander wanting total surveillance so that they can create essentially a police state, but with supes.
No more secrets.
Last week, we discussed how almost every shot of this show has a poster or a sign or something in the background with some type of Vought or Supe picture on it, giving us the impression that they are always watching and tying into the theme of Homelander being an ever-looming threat. Now, this, of course, also calls back to George Orwell's 1984, when imagery of Big Brother, such as posters saying Big Brother is watching you, were posted all around the city. Puppet A-Train goes on to talk about a woke principal and his husband, Chad, showing us blatant homophobia from Homelander and Vought. And then the song goes on to tell kids to turn on their own mom and dad. This is commenting on a few things. One, the indoctrination of children. It's very popular on the political right to accuse teachers and schools of indoctrinating kids into left-wing ideology and how it should be left up to the parents to decide what their children learn about. But then, in the same breath, we see far right-wing advocates move on to place right-wing indoctrination into schools. So this song is essentially showing us that in the world of politics, you'll often find people who talk out of both sides of their mouths. Also, the indoctrination of political ideology in youth calls to mind the Hitler Youth, when Hitler spread his hateful, toxic ideology to children who were too young to know better. Ryan isn't really feeling the song and expresses some concerns to the director, showing us again that Ryan is not on board with his dad and Vought's plans, nor does Ryan share his dad's hate-filled outlook on life and mankind. When Ryan says,
I just need to go 10-1.
This is an expression used in show business to indicate that you need to go take a whiz.
Well, I need the 10-1 on that tree behind the store, but I'll wait until we're done here.
Ashley says,
He already made that apology to Temple Bethel, so that should be a done deal.
calling back to how Firecracker said this Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's quote in the previous episode.
Are Jewish space lasers brainwashing you into joining their shulls?
Now, we get another reference to former President Trump with the Vought marketing team wanting to start selling NFTs. That's non-fungible tokens of Homelander. Trump also sold NFTs featuring his likeness in various different Photoshop positions. Here we can see Homelander golfing, which is former President Trump's favorite hobby, hunting, Homelander as Santa, Homelander as a NASCAR racer, football player Homelander, and astronaut Homelander. Homelander mentions to Sage how they killed former VNN anchor Cameron Coleman for no reason because they thought that he was the leak. Sage says that it's just a speed bump, but then Firecracker says,
Cameron golfed with Mike Lindell, who just pulled $50 million worth of pillow commercials. You call that harmless?
Now, Mike Lindell, of course, being the My Pillow guy you've probably seen on late night television hawking pillows, but he's also one of the guys who went all in on the baseless claims that the 2020 election was stolen and that there was mass voter fraud. Mike Lindell is notorious for running his pillow ads on conservative news channels like Fox News, but following lawsuits from voting machine companies, those channels decided to pull Lindell's pillow ads temporarily. But in the universe of The Boys, it's Lindell who is pulling the ads because Cameron Cole is no longer hosting. Now, all season we've been predicting that Homelander would take part in and incite a violent insurrection on January 6th, mirroring the real-world insurrection that occurred on January 6, 2021 to halt the certification of Joe Biden's victory. But we have to remember that Homelander actually wants Newman's win to be certified, but I'm really not sure why they don't just wait for her to be officially sworn in as VP a few weeks later on Inauguration Day before they assassinate President-elect Singer. We catch back up with the Deep and his octopus lover Ambrosia, who's actually played by the legendary Tilda Swinton.
Jesus, Kevin, you really have the soul of a poet.
When Starlight talks to her mom, we're reminded of the fact that her mother was always using Starlight as a proxy. She was living her best life through her daughter, and she was always imposing her goals and her dreams on her daughter. We're seeing that happen again here with her trying to impose her personal feelings on abortion on her daughter. Never mind the fact that her daughter is being attacked and smeared in the media. All her mom cares about is criticizing her for having an abortion. Starlight then goes on to say how she didn't want to bring a baby into a world that is ending. Now, she is of course referring to Homelander and the Home Teamers' desire for American democracy to end. But this was also serving as an allegory for climate change. Starlight represents the political left on this series, especially the youth vote on the political left. And many young adults on the left are expressing the fact that they don't plan on having children because they fear what kind of world that child would grow up in. And if that child will be able to have the same luxuries of clean water, clean air, and a freaking atmosphere. This symbolic reference to climate change could be meant to symbolize our political climate that's being focused on in this show. Not only is the earth getting hotter, but the temperature of the political divide in America is getting higher and higher and could be reaching its boiling point. In fact, you could argue that the attempted insurrection on January 6th was that boiling point. During Starlight's argument with her mom, we see Huey locking his hard drive with dirt on Newman in this safe, which of course comes back to play later in the episode. Here we can also see Huey wearing an Iggy Pop shirt, the father of punk. Thus is signifying that Huey has really hardened over the years and has come a long way from being just a Billy Joel fan.
What do you mean, just a Billy Joel fan?
Billy Joel's great. No offense to Billy Joel, I'm just saying Iggy Pop a little bit harder than Billy Joel. So when Huey sees the image of the shooter Sage is hiring to assassinate Singer, he says,
"You really think this could be our Lee Harvey?"
This is in reference to Lee Harvey Oswald, the man who assassinated John F. Kennedy.
Or did he?
Doug, we talked about this. Magneto curved the bullet trying to save Kennedy because JFK was a secret mutant.
Why would you try and save him? Because he was one of us.
So last episode, we heard mention of a global pandemic for soups if they made a virus strong enough to take down Homelander. And that sentiment was expressed again in this episode.
You can't make it deadly enough to top Homelander without causing a, global pandemic.
And I'm actually curious if we're going to see the COVID pandemic adapted into this series, but as a pandemic for soups. Maybe we see soups having to wear masks, and maybe Vought Pharmaceutical will develop a soup vaccine that Firecracker refuses to take. It really does write itself. So Butcher got Frenchie out of prison against his will, so Frenchie could speed along the process of making a virus to stop Homelander without killing anyone else. Just like he recruited Frenchie somewhat against his will to find a way to kill Translucent.
You bring this to my doorstep? This is not my problem, huh?
Well, it is now. He knows what you look like.
On this package under the Christmas tree for Ryan, we see the same name, Don T. Beacunt. Of course, a reference to Butcher's username on the video game that he played earlier with Ryan this season. And in this package, we see the photo of Butcher, Becca, and their dog, Terror.
I swear to God, I'll get your mum back. Just take a little bit longer.
So I thought it was interesting that last week we heard Starlight suggest that they may actually need Butcher for the coming war.
I cannot believe that this is about to come out of my mouth, but we could use Butcher.
But now this episode, we're hearing her say,
"Things are bad already without this asshole back."
This is showing us that Starlight, just like every other character on the show, is living in a constant state of unsureness. Butcher, Frenchie, Kimiko, Huey, MM, they're all unsure, but they're hoping they're making the right decisions to keep each other, their families, and their world safe. Even characters like Homelander, Sage, and Firecracker, and especially Newman, are questioning their paths and their place in this war and how to win it. And that's really been the overarching theme of this season. We're seeing our characters battle their own inner demons. Homelander argues with this reflection. Butcher has Becca and Kessler representing two sides of his split personality. Frenchie and Kimiko are battling their own guilt for things they did in the past. MM is fighting his lifelong illness of OCD. Starlight is trying to decide what role she has as a supe, but also as Annie January. Look, I could go on. Surprisingly enough, it's Huey and A-Train, the characters who really started this journey back in season 1, who are the only two characters on the show who seem to have finally discovered who they want to be. Kessler says,
"Trying to figure out when you got this soft spot for soups. Was it when you shot your load and cream-pied Maeve?"
A reference to how Maeve and Butcher hooked up in season 3 when she was giving Butcher info on Vought and giving him Temp V. But we also learned in this exchange that Butcher cheated on Becca.
If your love was so perfect and pure, then why'd you fuck that waitress?
And I like that they showed us that Butcher and Becca's relationship wasn't perfect. Far from it, probably. But that doesn't matter because they loved each other dearly. And I think that love between Butcher and Becca is going to be what ultimately brings Ryan back to the good side. Here we can see that maps have been obtained of the DC Fairgrounds for January 6th. This is in reference to how those who orchestrated the attack on the US Capitol on January 6, 2020 had obtained detailed maps of the Capitol building. Next, we meet a shapeshifter who has to literally rip its skin off in order to take on a new appearance, as opposed to the more tame shapeshifters like in the Marvel Universe like Mystique and the Skrulls. And it's super fitting that shapeshifters in this universe would have a bloody and gruesome transformation. And I really like how the shapeshifters in this universe not only copy your physical appearance, but they clone your mind as well. MM says,
"This fight that we're in, this never f***ing ends. It killed my father."
A reference to how Soldier Boy and Vought killed his family and how he has been in this fight for his entire life. He also says,
"You know, I look in the mirror and I don't even see myself no more."
And this reminded me of the fact that the actor who plays MM also has lost a lot of weight. Some fans even thought that they had recast the character. But, as we heard in the premiere of this season, he's not eating much, and it's likely that his character's weight loss is a result of extreme stress. Here, we can see a magazine with the aforementioned Soldier Boy. When Web Weaver turns himself into Firecracker and Homelander, we see him, well, just watch.
Oh, what the f***?
And this reminded me of the Brown Widow on the Venture Brothers.
"Not in my parlor," said the spider to the butterfly.
And when Homelander eliminates Web Weaver, we can tell by the look on Firecracker's face that she is traumatized and that she might still be on a path of turning against him. But then again, she did gladly beat Cameron Coleman to death, so maybe not. Frenchie and Kimiko catch up and they have it out regarding him turning himself in and not letting her visit. Frenchie feels great guilt for his past and he tells Kimiko that she wouldn't understand. But Kimiko would perhaps be the only person who would understand what he's going through. She lives in constant guilt from her past life. Kimiko says that she looks in the mirror and hates what she sees, which echoes this episode's theme and the theme of this season, reflection. We have seen Homelander have conversations with his different reflections in the mirror. Starlight looking at a photo of her past self from season 1. Huey seeing himself covered in blood and questioning who he wants to be. Kessler represents a dark side reflection of Butcher, and MM says he looks in the mirror and doesn't recognize himself at all. These are all themes of self-analysis and self-loathing. And it doesn't get any more self-loathing than the Deep. This piece of shit is so ashamed of his own self that he kills the only being who actually loves him for who he is, Ambrosia. And oh my god, man, this scene was just so messed up and so sad. And this scene represents the Deep going fully to the dark side. He was always teased for his connection to aquatic life and being romantically involved with an octopus. But now he's killed that piece of himself and he is turning wholeheartedly over to Homelander. Huey says,
"Yeah, but it's not like you're palling around with Mitt Romney. You're working with Homelander."
A reference to how a Republican like Mitt Romney may have a different ideology from a Democrat like Newman, but he isn't some major threat to the fabric fabric of American democracy. Mitt Romney, of course, was the last Republican nominee for president before Donald Trump became the face of the party. And in modern-day politics, he's viewed as a Republican of yesteryear. He's a more moderate and nuanced Republican who cares about traditional things like decorum. And I loved this scene between Huey and Newman, showing us that she will come around and join the boys in their fight against Homelander. And oh boy, time for a smackdown. The Deep and Black Noir 2 show up at the boys' headquarters to kill them. And I'm actually a little surprised that Homelander just didn't want to do this himself. Deep, who remember is a murderer and a sexual assaulter, tries to play the victim.
First you try to cancel me, victimize an innocent man, because I guess that's just cool to do to white guys nowadays.
And we get a call back to Black Noir 2 being narcoleptic.
Oh shit! Sorry you guys, I'm narcoleptic.
And then, boom, A-Train zips in, cementing himself as a hero and finally facing off against his old team. Black Noir 2 starts flying, a callback to this scene earlier in the season.
Come on, let me fly. I can fly, did you know that?
Later on, Ashley says,
Your chip. Don't forget to cut it out.
These chips are used to track Vought's supes. A callback to this scene in Season 2 when Frenchie removes Starlight's chip. This is also a callback to Season 1 when the boys captured Translucent and used this enclosure to block his chip feed. Homelander learns about A-Train's betrayal and dude, is he crying?
Are you alright?
A-Train? How could he do this to me?
So I don't think Homelander is crying because he actually gives a damn about A-Train, but because he's not getting his way. Homelander is still a child in so many ways, and I'm not even talking about the breastfeeding. He throws temper tantrum, he cries when he doesn't get his way. He is so emotionally unstable. Firecracker says,
You know, some folks are just... well, they're born uppity.
Yet another incredibly racist remark. Uppity is a derogatory remark used in the Jim Crow South to describe black people who dared to try to climb the socioeconomic ladder. When Sage is fired, she leaves behind her Queen Maeve journal that we saw in previous episodes, confirming that her detailed plan of world domination is inside. Back at Vought Farms, we see Frenchie and Samir successfully recreate the soup virus, but Samir stabs Kimiko in the leg with it. And I loved this race against the clock to cut her leg off to prevent the virus from spreading, just like we've seen in shows like The Walking Dead when somebody is bit.
Only one way to keep you alive.
We get more of this stupid song, If You See Something, Say Something.
I could be a moocher from the welfare state, or your teacher who tries to indoctrinate.
And I love how Ryan flips the script on them. He is seeing something and deciding to say something, and that something is calling out Vought for this ridiculous propaganda. And then we end with the reveal that Starlight isn't Starlight, and that she was replaced by the shapeshifter at the bar. And I love how creepy and ominous this reveal was. Now, I also want to talk about something regarding Huey's sexual assault, but I want to issue a warning before doing so. Last week we saw Huey assaulted, and while it was painted to be a comedic scene, it was still horrible for Huey.
Sometimes you just gotta make your own, and then them. No!
And now we are again seeing Huey being assaulted and he doesn't even know it. He's having sex with someone he thinks is his girlfriend, but it's not, and therefore this is not consensual sex. And I'm curious to see how Huey is going to react when he finds out. Alright guys, well those are all the Easter eggs that we caught in this week's episode of The Boys. Big shout out to the writer of this video, Colton Ogburn. You can find his social links below. And guys, if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.